The email landed in my inbox like a grenade, its blast radius tearing through 13 years of marriage in a single click. I was crouched in a makeshift command post in Helmand, sweat pooling under my Kevlar, the air thick with dust and diesel. My name's Michael, 42, a gunnery sergeant with the Marine Corps, and I'd been boots on the ground for 4 months when Sarah decided to pull the pin. The subject line, cold as a January morning, read, "Let's handle this maturely." Attached was a PDF, divorce papers filed, and final no discussion. 3 sentences in the body gutted me worse than any firefight. She'd drained our joint account $85,000, every penny we'd scraped together. She'd moved her new boyfriend David into our Seattle home, the one I'd poured my VA loan into, the one with the creaky porch I'd promised to fix. I stared at the screen, the laptop's glow harsh against the dim tent, my squad's murmurs fading into a dull hum. My fingers hovered, itching to type a novel's worth of rage betrayal questions. Instead, I shut the lid, stood, and trudged to the communal showers. Scalding water hit my shoulders, but it didn't wash away the weight. I dressed for my patrol shift flak jacket. M4 muscle memory said nothing to anyone. Back in my bunk that night, under the faint whine of a generator, I reopened the email. Read it again. Her words were clinical, like a doctor dictating a terminal diagnosis. Papers filed. Account settled. David's moved in. No apology, no softness, just finality. I typed one word. Noted, and hit send. No arguments, no begging, no threats. That's not how I'm wired. Ramirez? My rackmate sprawled across his cot, dog-eared paperback in hand, glanced over. "You good, Gunny?" His voice was casual, but his eyes flicked with concern, catching the tension in my jaw. "Yeah," I lied, staring at the canvas ceiling. "Just home stuff." He nodded, returned to his book. "Marines don't pry. You learn to read the room, know when to let a man stew." Truth is, I wasn't shocked, not entirely. 6 months before I shipped out, cracks had started showing. Subtle, but there. Sarah stopped asking about my day, her texts dropping from paragraphs to single words. She'd work late at the clinic where she manned the front desk, come home smelling of new perfume, not sweat. Gym 3 times a week, but her sneakers stayed pristine. New dresses, new friends. I never met, a phone suddenly locked with a passcode I didn't know. I didn't tail her or hack her messages, that's not my style. But I'm not blind. I'd seen the signs, felt the shift like a fault line ready to rupture, so I'd made moves, quiet ones, secured my birth certificate, marriage license, house, title my name only thanks to the VA, in a storage unit across town. Stashed Grandpa's pocket watch, Mom's old China things that held weight beyond money. Opened a side account at a credit union, siphoned a chunk of my pay, not enough to raise flags, but enough to keep me from zero if the worst came. And it had. The night before deployment, SeaTac Airport, her hug was stiff, her voice flat. Come back safe, no tears, no warmth like sending off a coworker, not a husband heading to war. I should have known then, but hope's a stubborn thing, clinging like sand in your boots. I was wrong. What Sarah didn't know was I'd prepped for this moment, built a fallback like I'd plan a mission. And while I don't start fights, I damn sure finish them. If this hits home, think about your own defenses. What's your plan when life pulls the rug out? I met Sarah at a buddy's 4th of July cookout back in 2010, the kind where the air smells like charcoal and cheap beer, and everyone's got a red Solo cup in hand while fireworks crackle in the distance. I was on leave between tours, crashing on my pal Chris's couch in Seattle, trying to shake off the grit of my last stint in Iraq. Chris, a fellow Marine who'd gotten out a year earlier, dragged me to his backyard bash to reintegrate with civilians, as he put it. I wasn't much for crowds back then, still aren't, but I showed up in jeans and a faded core tee, nursing a bottle of Bud, watching folks laugh and toss horseshoes. That's when I spotted her, Sarah, with her sundress fluttering in the breeze, flipping burgers at the grill like she owned the place. She was wrapping up her admin certification for medical offices, aiming for a steady desk job after bouncing around retail gigs. Less drama, she'd later tell me, preferring the predictability of scheduling appointments over dealing with cranky customers. Our eyes met when I wandered over for a plate, and she flashed a smile that cut through the haze in my head. "You look like you could use some real food," she said, piling on extra cheese. We talked easy light about the Seahawks' lousy season, her love for hiking, Rainier, my vague stories of base life without getting into the heavy stuff. By the time the sun dipped, we'd swapped numbers, and I walked her to her car under a sky exploding with colors. It felt normal, something I hadn't chased in years. Our first date was a week later, a picnic at Discovery Park, where the Puget Sound laps at the shore, and you can forget the world's chaos for an afternoon. I packed sandwiches, ham and Swiss, nothing fancy, and she brought a blanket and a bottle of local wine. We sat on the bluffs watching ferries glide by, talking about everything and nothing. She asked about my family dad, a retired mechanic who'd taught me to fix engines before I could drive. Mom, a school nurse with a laugh that filled rooms. I skimmed over the rough parts, Dad's drinking spells, Mom's endless worry during my enlistment. Sarah shared her side. Her father, a sharp-suited finance manager at a downtown bank, always preaching stability. Her brother, a pharmaceutical rep climbing the corporate ladder in Portland. No military blood in her veins, which made her questions genuine, not loaded. "What's it really like over there?" she'd probe gently, and I'd give sanitized versions, team camaraderie, the rush of missions, skipping the nightmares the buddies lost to IEDs. That day sealed it. We kissed as the tide rolled in, and for the first time in ages, I felt anchored. We moved fast after that, like folks do when life's clock ticks louder. 8 months in, I proposed on a rainy Seattle evening, down on one knee in our tiny apartment overlooking the bay, a simple ring I'd saved up for during downtime. She said yes with tears, and we tied the knot at a small courthouse ceremony, followed by a backyard reception at Chris's same spot we'd met full circle. Her family flew in, polite but puzzled by my uniform. Dad shook my hand firmly, murmuring about honorable service, while her brother joked about me trading fatigues for a suit someday. My side was smaller, Mom beaming, Dad sober and proud, a few core brothers toasting with shots. Early marriage was a whirlwind of adjustments. Sarah landed her gig at a bustling clinic in Capitol Hill, handling patient intakes and insurance headaches with a calm I envied. I'd come home from drills, she'd have dinner waiting pasta or stir-fry her specialties, and we'd binge-watch shows like The Office to unwind. Weekends meant drives to the Olympic Peninsula, camping under stars, her head on my shoulder by the fire. She bragged to friends about my deployments, calling me her hero, though she admitted the jargon baffled her. Mos Ura, all foreign. I tried explaining the Corps as family, the purpose it gave, but she'd nod, eyes glazing slightly, steering back to civilian dreams like buying a house, starting a garden. Subtle hints crept in, even then, ones I brushed off as normal newlywed friction. She'd sigh when I packed for training weekends, muttering about always being second to the uniform. Or during holidays when I'd miss Thanksgiving due to exercises she'd host alone, her voice tight on the phone. "It's fine, really." But we'd make up with weekend getaways like that trip to Whidbey Island, where we rented a cabin and forgot the world, tangled in sheets with ocean views. By 2014, we'd saved enough for our first home, a cozy 3-bedroom in a quiet suburb with a yard for barbecues and a garage for my tools. The VA loan made it possible, my name solo on the mortgage, to qualify, but I added her to the deed without a second thought. Marriage meant partnership, right? We painted walls together, her choosing soft blues for the bedroom, me installing shelves in the office. It felt solid, like building a future brick by brick. Then came the losses that tested us. Dad passed a year after the wedding, a sudden heart attack on the golf course, ironic since he'd finally retired to chase birdies. I flew back for the funeral, Sarah by my side, holding my hand through the eulogies. She handled the arrangements with grace, coordinating with Mom, who was shattered. The inheritance wasn't huge, a modest sum from his savings and life insurance, but it wiped our student loans and padded our account, giving us breathing room. Mom followed 3 years later, pancreatic cancer sneaking up despite her healthy habits, no smoking, yoga devotee. Watching her fade in hospice broke something in me. Sarah was there cooking meals, driving to appointments, her support a quiet anchor. Another chunk of inheritance came, easing financial strains, but the emotional void lingered. I'd stare at old photos late nights, Sarah rubbing my back. She'd be proud. Deployments defined our rhythm, 4 in total. Syria twice, Afghanistan, twice each, carving deeper grooves. First Syria run in 2015, hot, dusty ops hunting ISIS pockets. I'd call home when signals allowed, Sarah's voice crackling over sat phones. "Miss you, stay safe." But returns brought readjustments, hypervigilance in crowds, nightmares jolting me awake. She'd hold me, whispering it'd pass, but I saw her frustration when I'd zone out during dinners or snap at small things. Second, Syria 2017, tougher. Lost a squad mate to sniper fire, the kind that haunts. Homecoming was strained. Sarah planned a welcome party, but I bailed early, overwhelmed. "I get it," she'd say, but her eyes said otherwise. Afghanistan first in 2018, mountain patrols, endless hikes with gear weighing like regrets. Emails from her grew shorter, laced with loneliness. Another night alone. I'd reply with promises of post-tour adventures, but the distance felt more than miles. Last one before the big fallout Afghanistan 2020, amid withdrawal chaos, evacs Taliban shadows. Calls home revealed her restlessness. When's this end, Michael? I didn't sign for perpetual waiting. I understood the isolation, the worry lines etching her face via video chats, but the core was my core, where I led teams, saved lives, found purpose amid pandemonium. Back stateside, each time Sarah seemed further adrift, like a role she'd auditioned for but no longer fit. She'd dive into girls' nights, returning bubbly but distant stories of friends' divorces peppered with living free envy. Our talks turned tense, me floating re-enlistment, her countering with civilian job please, ignoring my 15 years in his career, not detour. Therapy suggestion, we're okay, just phasing. But late nights at work, spiked weekends vanishing with unnamed pals, wardrobe upgrades, gym obsessions sans visible sweat, red flags waved, but I held fire. Dad's lesson, think deep, act certain. Instead, I observed prepped shadows, that storage unit, the side account instincts, whispering storms brew. Life schooled me, trust that gut or pay dearly. By 2019, the drift widened. Sarah's irritations peaked at my calls interrupting her outings, her chats laced with pal Lisa's post-divorce glow. She's traveling, dating, real life. Comments on our mismatches stung. Hobbies, my fishing versus her yoga dreams, my service versus her stability. I proposed counseling again. She deflected, temporary funk. Then the pattern solidified, overtime excuses, mystery trips, phone guards. Should have confronted, but restraint ruled. Quiet vigilance instead, because deep down I knew change loomed and preparation beat reaction. And in this game, foresight wins wars. 2 weeks after that gut punch email, I was in the chow hall, fork midway to my mouth, when my phone buzzed like an incoming round of bank notification lighting up the screen. Another withdrawal, this one massive $85,000, leaving our joint account gasping at $19.82. I set the fork down slowly, the clatter lost in the din of clanking trays and banter from my unit. Opened the app, stared at the red numbers, the transaction history scrolling like a bad dream. Small drips at first, then floods, all post-deployment. Our nest egg, that $45,000 we'd built through skipped vacations and overtime wired to some unknown account, vanished like smoke. Jenkins across the table munching on mystery meat caught my expression. "Bad news from home, Gunny?" he asked, eyebrow arched. I locked the screen, forced a shrug. Just some account mix-up, probably a glitch. But inside it burned, not just the money but the calculation behind it. Sarah playing house with David while stripping mine bare. That night back at base, I paced the narrow aisle between bunks, the air heavy with sock stench and distant artillery thuds, before dialing the bank from the comm center. The line crackled time zones, mocking me as I waited for a rep. "Mr. Briggs, this is Emily from Fraud Services," a voice finally cut in, Midwest accent steady. I explained the unauthorized pulls, my deployment status adding weight, military protections kicking in. "Let's review," she said, keys tapping. Transfers started small, $500 here, $1,000 there, then escalated. Last one today to an external account under, looks like a joint with a David Hayes. My grip tightened on the receiver. "That's her boyfriend. Can you freeze it?" "Already noting it as disputed. We'll investigate, but you'll need statements from your end." Hung up, I leaned against the wall, watching guys line up for calls home, laughing with kids, sweet-talking wives, while my world unraveled. That's when Ramirez found me fresh from a smoke break. "Heard from Jenkins you looked like you'd swallowed a frag at chow. Spill it, man." I don't dump personal baggage, but Ramirez had yanked me from a kill zone in Helmand, once covering fire, while I dragged a wounded lance corporal to safety. Trust earned in blood. Sarah cleaned out the accounts. Boyfriend's in our house. Divorce papers mid-patrol. He whistled low. No empty sympathies. "Shit. Plan. Not solid yet. If you need backup stateside contacts, whatever, say the word." Nodded thanks, but sleep evaded me that night. Pulled out the laptop instead, logged into our home security system, Nest Cams I'd installed myself, app linked for remote peeks. Sarah probably forgot I had access or figured deployment meant out of sight, out of mind. Feeds loaded. Our driveway at dusk, an unfamiliar black SUV parked crooked like it owned the spot. Switched to interior living room. Stranger tall, slick hair jeans, too tight. lounging on my recliner remote in hand flipping channels. David, no doubt. He stood stretched, wandered to the kitchen, my kitchen, the one I'd gutted and rebuilt on leave 2 years back, installing granite counters with calloused hands. There was Sarah chopping veggies, laughing at something he said, her hand on his arm. Zoom in him, using my favorite mug, the one with the faded core emblem, sipping coffee like it was his morning ritual. Switch cams, backyard, him throwing a ball for our lab mix. Buddy, who wagged like this intruder, was pack leader. Bedroom feed, thank God offline for privacy, but imagination filled the gaps. Watched for 20 minutes, a cold knot twisting in my gut. Not jealousy exactly, more like violation, my life repackaged for someone else. Something snapped, not to rage, but to clarity. Shut the laptop, grabbed my notepad, started listing under the bunk's dim light. Contact Robert for legal. Check VA loan docs. Emergency leave request. Pension security. Background on David Hayes. No more drifting, this was ops, now intel gathering phase. At 0500 pre-patrol brief, I shot Robert an email, subject, urgent legal discreet. Robert, a former Corps JAG turned civilian attorney in Tacoma, replied within the hour. Secure line ASAP. We connected via encrypted call, his voice gravelly from years of courtroom battles. Michael, what's the sit rep? I laid it out, email, drained account squatter in my house. Sounds like premeditated, he said. First, freeze everything. I'll draft affidavits. You got proof. Cam's bank logs. Good. VA loans in your name, big leverage. Send what you have. Post-call focus sharpened like zeroing a rifle. Patrol that day dragged mind split between scanning for threats and plotting next moves. Back at base, dove into research, limited net access, but enough for basics. Googled David Hayes. Seattle hits on a LinkedIn real estate consultant, flashy profile pic, testimonials from satisfied clients. Dug deeper. Public records showed 2 DUIs, a dismissed fraud charge from 2019, something about falsified loan apps. Pattern emerging, not yet, but flags up, shared with Ramirez over MREs that evening. This guy's got a rap sheet, I said. He chewed thoughtfully. Heard stories like this. Buddy and recon wife hooked up with a scammer while he was in Syria. Guy cleaned him out, sold the boat. Took years to recover. How'd he handle? Lawyers, feds. Turned out a ring targeting mill families. Seed planted, maybe not isolated. Next days, blurred patrols by day, intel by night. More cam views, David walking Buddy daily, using my tools in the garage, Sarah cooking meals I'd taught her. Emotional hits came in waves. One feed showed them on the couch, her head on his shoulder, watching a movie we'd loved. Paused, breathed deep, refocused. Bank update call. Mr. Briggs transfers traced to a new joint account, Sarah and David's names. We've flagged fraud, but funds are moved. How much left? 140,000 from a recent refi. Wait, you know about that. Refi with the alarm bells. Application 3 months ago. Equity pull 320,000. Your signature on file. Bullshit, I'd been deployed. Forged job. Send copies. Hung up, fury simmering to strategy. Emailed Robert the details. His reply, bingo, forgeries felony. Co-applicant David, his record screams accomplice. Options contest loan police report. We met virtually again, his face pixelated on screen. House titles key, your name primary. We file fraud, freeze assets. What about her? Depends involvement. Gather more. Introduced Jenkins to the loop needed eyes. My sister's a PI in Spokane, he offered. Discreet tales. Appreciate but low key. Instead, public digs, David's socials, Facebook locked, but Instagram public pics with Sarah at bars. Hikes our backyard BBQ. Comments from mutuals. Cute couple, dated back 6 months pre-deployment. Gut twist, Ramirez shared war stories over coffee. In 18, squad leader got similar wife in a contractor drained joint sold car. He went AWOL to confront wrecked career. Not me, playing smart. Nodded approval, emergency leave approved. Master Sergeant pulled strings citing family crisis. Wheels up in weeks but prepped meantime. Pension check, locked 2-factor added. More cams, David driving my truck F-150, I'd babied plates visible. Noted VIN for tracking. Bank docs arrived. Sig forgery obvious, my flourish absent, initial botched. Robert, slam dunk, now deeper on David. His research, Hayes linked to Paul Reynolds' Realty Shark in quick flips. 3 joint deals last 2 years, homes undersold. Scheme, smells like, targeting deploys. Echoed Ramirez's tale. Feds angle brewing. Cam Gold audio snippet. David on phone in kitchen. Yeah, list soon. Cash buyer ready. Sarah in background. Michael won't fight. Troops fold easy. Recorded sent Robert. Evidence mounting. Stakes rose, not just divorce organized hit. Unit buzz grew. Another guy, Alvarez, confessed similar ex took half while in Iraq. Fight back Gunny. Bolstered resolve. Leave landed stateside motel, alias no contact. Met Robert at diner folder thick. Refi fraud clear. David's record embezzlement plea. Options laid. Reclaim funds press charges. Want justice. Plan hatched bank probe clerk filings watch trap spring. Drove by house. David's SUV Sarah's car. Watched tempted confrontation but held. Bank meet. Showed proof officer Ashen. Reporting. Text from Sarah. Bank inquiries. Silent. Clerks contested refi. Voicemail. Talk Michael. Ignored. Robert update. Truck impounded. David driving suspended. Says. Scripts inside from clinic. Escalation. Motel reflection path locked. Thompson meet doc spread. Common ploy. Funds half gone to Reynolds. Subpoena. Robert Doug Reynolds flipper Hayes partner. Pattern deployed spouses. Bench sink. Operation. Feds notified. Beer ponder. Sarah complicit texts. Fraud talk. David arrested. Typed queries. Paul Reynolds. Dots denial. Satisfaction edged not vengeance truth. Feds call. Breakthrough. Prep intensified web widening. The pieces were falling into place, but the real storm hit when Robert called that morning, his voice urgent over the motel room's scratchy phone line. Feds are in FBI Financial Crimes Unit. They've been eyeing Hayes and Reynolds for months, a multi-state racket hitting military families like yours. Your evidence? It's the linchpin. I sat on the edge of the unmade bed, the room smelling of stale coffee and cheap carpet cleaner processing. They want to meet? Today. Seattle field office. Be there at 1300. Bring everything Cam's bank docs, the works. I nodded to myself, adrenaline kicking like pre-op nerves. This wasn't just my marriage crumbling. It was a conspiracy calculated and cold preying on guys like me who left homes unguarded to serve. Drove to the office in my rental sedan, plain clothes to blend jeans, hoodie, ball cap pulled low. The building loomed downtown, glass and steel, reflecting the gray Pacific Northwest skate buzzed in metal detector beep, then escorted to a conference room with bland walls and a one-way mirror that screamed interrogation. Agents Smith and Johnson waited. Smith, mid-40s, sharp suit, no-nonsense stare. Johnson, younger, wiry build, notebook, ready. Mr. Briggs, Smith started, handshake firm. Appreciate you coming. We've reviewed the prelims from your attorney. Walk us through it. I laid it out chronologically. The deployment email account drains cam feeds, forged Refi David's record, Reynolds' ties. Passed the folder printouts USB with recordings. Johnson jotted notes furiously. This Refi 320,000 equity pull. Signature, not mine, deployed no access. Smith leaned in. And the cams caught Hayes discussing a quick sale. Audio clear, list end week, cash buyer 410K. They exchanged glances, the room humming with fluorescent lights. Fits the pattern, Johnson said. We've got 11 similar cases deployed. Spouses forged docs, undersold properties. Hayes woos the wife. Reynolds flips cheap to shell buyers. They split profits. VA loans make it federal. Tension built in my chest. Not fear, but that pre-contact buzz, knowing action loomed. Sarah's role? I asked, voice steady. Smith hedged. TBD, could be victim, could be complicit. Ever hear her mention Reynolds? Flashback hit casual dinner chat, her saying, friend knows a realtor for downsizing. Dismissed then. Relate it. They nodded, recording whirring. We'll need a formal statement. And access to those cams real time if possible. Granted it app shared. Meeting wrapped with warnings. No contact with suspects. We billed quietly. Left with Patel's card. Wade Smith handed his, but in my mind it blurred to the gravity. We'll touch base soon. Back at the motel, phone buzzed Sarah. Need to talk face to face. Riverfront Park, noon tomorrow. Heart raced, temptation to go hash it out, but Robert's advice echoed. Trap, skip it. Replied nothing, but gears turned. This was her reaching out, panicked maybe. Near miss one. That night, insomnia hit, scrolling cams, house dark but motion alert pinged. Feed Sarah, pacing living room, phone in hand, dialing. My number. Ignored call lit my screen seconds later. Voicemail. Michael Banks freezing everything. What's happening? Call back. Tension coiled. Her voice cracked genuine fear or act. Deleted, no response. Dawn stakeout plan formed. Met Robert at a greasy spoon outskirts, eggs cold as we plotted. She thinks you're meeting her, use it. We watch the house while she's out. Nodded coffee bitter. If David and Reynolds show, record alert feds. Drove separate parked blocks away, me and rental him in his Beamer. 9:30. M. House quiet, curtains drawn. 9:45. Sarah emerged, jeans jacket, hair tied back, got in her sedan, headed parkward. We waited, binoculars up. 20 minutes ticked, tension thick as fog rolling off the sound. Then a silver Lexus pulled up, realty decal on door. Paul Reynolds, slick suit, briefcase. David greeted at porch, handshake inside, quick. Bingo, Robert whispered via Bluetooth. Rolling CST. App open. Feeds live. Living room, Reynolds snapping photos with phone, fireplace, bay windows. David pointing, updated kitchen, good bones, listed 460, buyer offers, 410 cash, quick close. Reynolds, husband issues, Sarah mentioned trouble. David smirked. Military types bark no bite. Deployments keep him busy. He'll settle low to avoid hassle. My blood boiled, but focus held, recording every word. Cloud upload, instant. Forwarded to Smith. Happening now. Conspiracy on tape. Robert grinned, gold. Minutes stretch, tension peaking, near miss to Sarah's car. No false alarm jogger. Then sirens faint growing. FBI vans swarmed, unmarked but tactical gear obvious. Agents breached, shouts muffled on cam. FBI hands up. Feeds showed chaos. Reynolds dropping phone. David freezing, cuffed swift. Boxes hauled, laptops, files. Street view from our spot. Spectacle unfolding, neighbors peeking. Phone rang. Smith. Good tip. Got a mid-scheme wire fraud conspiracy, false pretenses. Sarah, en route back, distressed. Indeed, her sedan screeched up, her out hands, mouth covered, watching agents cart evidence. She spotted nothing our way, but her face, pale eyes wide, hit me. 13 years flashing, wedding vows, shared laughs, now this. Tempted to approach but held position. Interrogation phase kicked, post-arrest. Feds hauled me in next day for debrief. Same room but air charged. Your feed sealed it, Johnson said. They're talking, fingering each other. Details spilled, Hayes claimed. Reynolds mastermind, vice versa. 11 families confirmed, millions siphoned. Sarah next, Smith added. Interviewing her now. Waited in adjacent room, coffee, styrofoam, mind racing. Near miss 3, door cracked. Her voice echoed, sobbing. I didn't know the full extent, strained to hear. David said Michael hid money. Refi protected me. Agent probe, forgery. He guided my hand. Complicit then. Heart sank but resolve hardened. My turn, statement under oath, timeline reiterated. Want to observe, Smith offered. Through mirror, Sarah, disheveled, agents pressing. Transfers to Reynolds, earnest for sale. She crumbled. David handled. Said quick flip, fresh start. Lies, unraveled, text shown her in loop. Tension max. She glanced mirrorward as if sensing me. Eyes met invisible guilt. Regret. I turned away. Post-session, Smith. She's accessory, plea likely. Nodded justice, bittersweet. David and Paul grilled, separate transcripts later. David ratting Reynolds' shells. Paul spilling Hayes' seduction playbook. Ring crumbling. Sarah's attempts amped. Texts flooded. Michael explain, FBI at house. Calls ignored. But one voicemail pierced. I messed up, meet fix this. Deleted, but doubt nagged. Was she pawn or player? Robert advised. No contact taints case. Stakeout residual, drove by house, Eve, feds gone. Sarah alone, lights dim. Watched from shadows, her silhouette pacing. Near confrontation. She stepped out, scanning street, sensed. Ducked low, heart pounding. Drove off, tension release and exhale. Feds built subpoenas, warrants. I assisted remotely, emails flying. Climax peaked at prelim, hearing courthouse sterile, me in back row incognito. David and Paul in jumpsuits shackled. Charges read, fraud, ID, theft, conspiracy. Sarah absent, separate track. Lawyers argued, evidence teased my cam's key exhibit. Judge denied bail, bangs gavel. Outside, Sarah waited, no phantom, but her car parked nearby, near miss 4. Slipped away unseen, weeks blurred. More interrogations, me clarifying details. Emotional toll hit, nights replaying marriage end, but purpose drove justice for others. Smith update, plea deals incoming. Your case broke it. Satisfaction crested, not revenge revelation. Sarah's final push. Handwritten note at motel, slipped under door. Please talk, not what seems. Crumpled it, but read first, excuses, tears stained. No reply. Path set confrontation indirect through law. Ring fell, but scars lingered. The dust settled slowly after the arrests, like the quiet after a firefight when the echoes fade and you're left assessing the damage. David and Paul took plea deals within weeks, each throwing the other under the bus in a scramble for lighter sentences. David fingering Paul as the architect of the flips, Paul painting David as the smooth-talking recruiter of vulnerable spouses. The feds laid it out in court documents I pored over in my motel room, a tri-state operation. 11 military families hit millions in equity siphoned through forged refis and quick sales to dummy buyers who laundered the cash. My case, with its crystal-clear cam footage and forged signature, became the cornerstone, the pattern prover that elevated it from isolated frauds to racketeering. Sarah's fate hung in the balance during those tense days. Her interviews revealed a mix of denial and deflection. David convinced me you were hiding assets, planning to leave me high and dry. But evidence mounted. Texts coordinating the refi, her signatures on transfer docs, even a shared email thread with Reynolds about listing prep. She wasn't the mastermind, but complicit enough for accessory charges. In the end, she cut a deal to full restitution of the stolen funds, $85,000 from accounts, plus the remaining refi cash waiver of any claims on the house, my pension, or assets. A signed confession to the forgery, community service, and probation. I could have pushed for more press charges to see her in cuffs like the others, but something held me back. Maybe the ghost of our early years, the woman who'd stood by during Mom's cancer, or just war weariness. No prison, I told the prosecutor, but make her feel the weight. Divorce finalized 6 months post that fateful email, a no-fault rubber stamp in a sterile courtroom home. In civvies her across the aisle with a public defender, eyes downcast. No drama, no last words, just papers, signed, assets divided clean. I walked out into Seattle's drizzle, free but hollow, the ring's band still indenting my finger like a scar. That same day, Agent Smith called as I sat in my truck staring at the sound. Hayes got 8 years fraud, conspiracy, identity theft. Reynolds 12+ asset forfeiture. Thought you'd want the update. Pause then. And there's more. Those 11 families. Recoveries, starting homes, reclaimed funds, traced. Your stand made it possible. Hung up, I drove to a overlook, watched ferries churn water, thinking of those other troops. Navy SEALs, Army grunts, Air Force pilots deployed with trust shattered stateside. Hadn't set out to be a crusader, just reclaim what was mine, but ripples spread, turning personal hell into collective justice. A year ticked by in a blur of readjustment. Sold the house, couldn't stomach the walls anymore. Echoes of laughter turned betrayal too loud. Listed it myself. Fair market pocketed proceeds after settling the contested refi. The bank ate the fraud loss, VA protections shielding my credit. With the cash, I bought a modest lodge outside Boise, Idaho, 2 bedrooms, 8 acres of pine-dotted land, a babbling creek out back for fishing. No neighbors to crowd the silence. Early retirement from the Corps after 20 years. Pensions kicked in, honorable discharge papers framed on the mantel. Adopted a lab mix named Ranger from a shelter loyal, eyes always up for hikes, replacing Buddy who'd stayed with Sarah in the split. Took up woodworking in a shed I built myself, crafting tables and chairs for locals, hands busy to keep the mind quiet. Evenings meant porch sits with a beer, sunsets painting the hills, Ranger at my feet. Rumor via Robert Sarah back in her Oregon hometown, crashing with parents' desk job at a small clinic, piecing life together. No hate lingered, just indifference, a chapter closed. Choices made, consequences faced. One crisp fall evening, a letter arrived, postmarked San Diego, handwritten, envelope thick. Opened it by the fire flames crackling. From a woman named Elena. Her husband Navy deployed in the Gulf when Hayes and Reynolds struck forged docs, attempted flip. Feds shared your name as the breakthrough case, she wrote. You don't know us, but you saved our home, our future. Thanks for fighting when folding was easier. Read it twice, words blurring slightly, then pinned it to the fridge with a magnet. On rough days when silence pressed, heavy memories surfaced like ghosts. I'd glance at it, reminder that good sprouted from the wreckage. More letters trickled in over months. A Army wife from Fort Bragg thanking for reclaimed savings. A Marine from Pendleton whose pension stayed intact. Formed a quiet network, emails exchanged stories, shared not therapy but solidarity. Even spoke at a mill-spouse support group once via Zoom from the lodge, voice steady. Trust your gut, prep quiet, stand firm. Words simple but resonant. System delivered for once. Hazen Reynolds still behind bars, last check appeals denied. Feds dismantled the ring arrests of peripherals following. Me day by day, rebuilding morning runs with Ranger woodworking orders, stacking even dated casually. A teacher from town, no rush. Scars, faded purpose renewed not in uniform, but in the quiet strength of moving forward. Instincts save lives. Preparation turns tides, and one man's fight can shield many. If this tale rings true, check your own foundations. Storms hit unannounced, but resilience rebuilds.